It is 4 p.m., so I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is definitely kind of an experimental thing, trying to stream these game update videos to Twitch first, and then seeing about putting them onto YouTube, just to kind of, add other potential audiences into engaging with the software. Obviously, the point of doing a beta test is that I want more people to see the project, interact with it, try it out, give suggestions, and all of that sort of thing. I'm the developer of SHADOWBOX. I'm not a video game designer, software engineer, or anything like that. I'm a paleontologist, using these tools like a monkey to try and figure out how to bring the work that I do into a new sort of paradigm. And I've been beta testing this software for the past year now. It first released into an open beta through Steam Early Access on January 1st of 2025. There have been a number of updates between then and now, and what I'm going to show off is just the content of the most recent update. My hope is that obviously my goal is to continue adding more and more stuff to this project throughout the year and throughout hopefully many years to come. I'm really proud of it thus far. I'm hoping that this inspires you to check it out on your own, or if not, to check out the other videos showing off the different parts of the program. And I definitely think that before too long on Twitch, because this is kind of a space that I haven't really utilized previously, to go through like every single exhibit and just kind of do a really long maybe day on a weekend and just show like what in and all is in here. But for now, we're just going to keep it simple for a first attempt, and I'm going to show you what's new in just this most recent update. So a couple of things when you get started. There are a lot of different display settings on here, including your frames per second, your VSync. So if you are beta testing this and you want to provide some information, this should make it easier for you to say what your frames per second are. I'm getting 60 frames per second on my computer. I'm looking at the live stream on Twitch, and it's definitely a lower frame rate than that. I'll review the video afterwards and see what it's actually streaming in. And again, part of the fun of figuring this out is that I am not a video game developer. I am utilizing Unreal Engine, which is free to use for educational purposes, in order to build out this mausoleum of natural history. So things like optimizing it for different levels of hardware. I would love to be able to have this run on as many different hardware settings as possible, but the rule when working with PC games is that there's basically an infinite combination of hardware, and you can only have it support so much. So, the PC that I build this on is fairly beefy. I want people who do not have that sort of hardware, who don't have those types of resources, to still be able to enjoy this as part of the general accessibility. And this software is free. It is always going to be free, even when it's released from early access. So don't at any point pay money to play this game. However, if you are interested in supporting the development, I'm going to run back into the spawn point real quick. Just because I don't charge for access to this software does not mean that there aren't ways to support the development. So here's a QR code that goes to the membership page on my Patreon. That means that if you are interested in, at a minimum, signing up for there are free options, so you can see free updates like the micro streams that I do on Monday afternoons. But if you would like to actually see a new article that I write every single week, and it's only $3 a month for that, you can sign up for the subscription. If you would like to be able to send me any questions and have them compiled in Q&A documents, which I send out periodically, that's the $6 a month option. And then if you want to be able to see my expedition videos, when I go out into the field to dig up fossils, you want to be able to see those videos the same day that I shoot them. That's for the expedition donor tier. That's $12 a month. And those videos are, when they get older, become available to more subscribers, but they are no longer going to be just available for free on YouTube for a variety of reasons. So those are all great ways to support the project. If you hit escape and go to credits, over to the donor tier, you can see that there are also ways to directly support this project. Again, this is through Patreon, so you go to the Patreon shop and you're able to select a donation tier. It comes with, depending on the tier, your amount of, you've got a certain word limit if you'd like to attach a message to it. Again, this is free, so anybody who is able to donate is a totally optional thing that I super appreciate, and it enables more people to be able to see free educational stuff. So with that, I want to bring you guys to what is new in this update. This was not a massive update, but it is adding to what was previously definitely the smallest exhibit, and now we've got some extra material. It's not in the Permian, it's in the Triassic. The Triassic period is the first of the three major periods of the Mesozoic era. So the Mesozoic is often called the age of the dinosaurs. There are lots of other things that are around in the Mesozoic, and lots of other groups are evolving during the Mesozoic. For example, we believe, according to fossil evidence, that the very first mammals evolve in the Mesozoic. In addition to the very first dinosaurs, we believe that birds evolved in the Mesozoic as well. Birds are nested within the dinosaur family tree, and they were present well before the extinction of all of the non-avian dinosaur relatives. The earliest fruiting trees, the angiosperms, are believed to have originated in the Mesozoic. There's some controversial evidence that has even cropped up recently that show that there may have been fruits earlier than that, but that's definitely not totally accepted at the time. And the Triassic is the first of these three periods. So this is when things are really starting to take off, and it's often likened to kind of an evolutionary laboratory. This is when, at the end of the Permian, 252 million years ago, this is the Permian period, there is a massive mass extinction, the biggest one that we have any evidence for. A significant amount of the species living on planet Earth, from both in terrestrial ecosystems, terrestrial habitats, as well as in the ocean. So unlike a lot of the previous mass extinctions, this affected both life on the land and in the sea pretty severely. And what we're looking at today in the Thanes group is a rock deposit based out of Nevada. So if you turn around, you can see these dig site maps that show approximately where these fossils are found. I say Nevada because that's just what my accent is. People who live there, I think, most frequently say Nevada, but I don't, so deal with it. And the Thanes group represents fossils that are just a few million years younger than that mass extinction boundary. So that mass extinction happens around 252 million years ago. And it's not instantaneous. This rolls out over several 100,000 years, most likely, to cause all of those groups to go extinct. And the Thanes group, the fossils that are presented here, this was the original fossil that I built this exhibit around. The actual fish jaw that you're looking at, there's a scale over here in the corner, is not massive, but I wanted this to appear when you first enter the exhibit like this massive, massive object. These are not even the full jaws, these are the partial jaws of a predatory fish called Bergeria. It's about 245 million years old. Collected in Nevada, and this is a public specimen reposited in the New Mexico Museum of Natural History. Here's a photograph that I took of the specimen, and over here you can look at the breakdown of where it lies in the family tree. So this is what the exhibit was originally built around, and what's new in this update, if you turn around over here, is our first Triassic Ammonite. So this is actually one scan, but you can see it in a couple of different orientations here. And it's an ammonite called Xenoceltites. And it was really fun learning about this species just in the past week while I was building this update. Part of the fun of designing and building this software and all of these exhibits is that I get an excuse to learn about things that otherwise might not be on my research, might not be on my plate as far as things that I need to really research deeply. For example, I mostly publish in the Cretaceous, is where I spend a lot of my time, particularly crocodilians in North America. So I wouldn't otherwise have had an excuse to sit down and really learn about a Triassic Ammonite. And that's why I'm excited to kind of show off this new guy here. This is in the genus Xenoceltites. So if we go up here to the family tree, the genus Xenoceltites, we do not have an exact species on this. There are several species of Xenoceltites that have been described previously, and this is definitely one of them, but which one is not necessarily known. So Xenoceltites is nested within a family of which it is the namesake, Xenoceltidae. And within that, it's in the order Ceratophyta, in the cephalopods of the mollusks, and in the kingdom Animalia. So this means that it's an animal. Within the animal family tree, it's a mollusk. You may know that mollusks include a lot of different types of shelled animals, not all of them, but mollusks can also include animals like clams. But this is not a clam. One of the things that makes ammonites different from clams is the fact that they are free swimming. This is an animal that would have been suspended in the water column and, swimming along, probably using just like an octopus. So if you look here at the shell, inside of the shell was the soft body of the ammonite. And we don't know a lot about the soft tissues of ammonites. They basically don't ever preserve, but we do have living somewhat close relatives to the ammonites called the nautilus. And the nautilus has a beak on the inside. They have these long tentacles that they use. I think they have an organ called a siphuncle, but again, I don't really work with mollusks, but I think the siphuncle is something you use to for propulsion. But cephalopod researchers correct me on that if I'm wrong. Basically, this is a relative of like squid and octopus, and lives inside of a shell, and outside of the shell in this opening, the aperture, I think it's called, would have emerged. This is not the aperture here, this is just where the shell is broken. It probably would have continued on a little ways, but where the original opening of the shell would be, that's where the tentacles would have emerged, and then it's picking out little pieces of food from the water column. These are carnivorous animals. They would have had a beak on the inside, so they're potentially preying on other animals as well. So let's go and get a close-up look at this fossil. You can turn it around. In SHADOWBOX, nearly all of the fossils, there are a couple of places where this isn't true, but nearly all of the fossils that you see, especially in these exhibits, when you get up close enough, a prompt appears at the bottom for you to examine, so you press that button and you're able to rotate around the fossil. So in addition to just walking around it and observing it that way and climbing on it if you so desire, you can also examine it this way, rotate it around. Here I'm using my left click to rotate it. You can also zoom in and out with the scroll wheel, and you can use the arrow keys or WASD, so either is available to you to kind of move it around in that way. So if you really want to get a close look at this 3D model, again, this is a 3D scan. It's not perfect, but for the purposes of an educational game, I think it's pretty good considering how small this fossil is. Down here in the bottom left, you can see the shell across. When you lay it this way, it's only about 2 centimeters. So this is a pretty small object that I was able to 3D scan, and that's pretty cool. And I think that it's pretty cool that I was able to take a fossil that is currently, living here with me in Tucson, and I was able to scan it, and now this model is available for, in theory, anybody anywhere in the world who has a Windows PC is able to download this and see it. If you don't, maybe you're still able to watch videos like this online to be able to, learn something about this ammonite. So something that I'll point out about it is that this is a little bit older, estimated to be a little bit older than Bergeria. This is about 250 million years old. So this is an animal that lived within 2 million years of that massive, massive mass extinction. And that really shows, 2 million years is a really long time in the human lifespan. That's an incomprehensible amount of time, considering the average person lives, 70 to 80 years. And we're talking about a difference of about 2 million years. But within evolutionary time and geological time, 2 million years is not that long at all. So this shows that this species is one of many that lived relatively quickly after that mass extinction. So life not only survived these catastrophic events, but they also tend to flourish pretty quickly afterwards. And I'm going to bring up the article that I wrote about Xenoceltites that'll kind of go into this, but these fossils, which are found pretty much worldwide, I wouldn't say worldwide, found in across several different continents, all within a relatively narrow time period. So this was what we would call a cosmopolitan, probably a disaster taxon, and that means that it's something that colonized the world shortly after a disaster event wiped out most of its potential competitors. I'm going to switch into free camera mode here. This is another feature in SHADOWBOX where if you get tired of the constraints of gravity, you can just press a button and float and fly around the exhibit. So if you'd like to get a little bit closer up at the ammonites that are floating in the air, you can, and then just hit that button again to return to the ground. So here's a map of what planet Earth looked like 245 million years ago, and the rocks that became the Thanes group, this is a thing that a lot of people get wrong. When we talk about geological formations, or lithostratigraphic formations, as they're most formally called, we're not talking about a feature that existed back in prehistoric time. Things like the Hell Creek Formation, that didn't exist in the Cretaceous. It exists today, and the rocks that make up the Hell Creek Formation, or the Thanes group, existed, or the sediments that accumulated during that time period were deposited in that time period and exist now as modern geological features. So the Thanes group exists today, but the sediments that were deposited to create the Thanes group, starting at around 250 and continuing on to 245 and younger, they were accumulating around on what was the west coast of Pangaea. So a lot of people are familiar with this story that during a particular period of time, this was at the end of the Paleozoic and the beginning of the Mesozoic, all of the continents on planet Earth are kind of coming together, and they smashed into each other, creating one gigantic landmass. And that meant that in addition to animals being able to kind of freely roam, somewhat, but relatively freely roam across this continental landmass, it also means that species living in the sea on this coast are able to move between what are now totally distinct and very distant continents. So keep this map in mind when we go on to read the article. This is, again, an ocean deposit right off the coast of what would become North America. And this seaway, basically everything outside of Pangaea, this whole entire ocean is called Panthalassa. And within the kind of inside of Pangaea, inside of this C-shaped continent, that is called the Tethys. So let's go ahead and read the article. There are a couple of different ways that you can access this kind of supplement. It unfortunately does mean that you need internet access. So my apologies to people who might download SHADOWBOX on a limited internet connection and not be able to access everything. There are advantages to doing it this way. It means that as I read the article on stream, if I notice that there's a typo, I can go onto my phone and edit it, and that change is instantly pushed to everybody everywhere, as opposed to having to push a full game update, which takes several hours in an ideal sense. So there are a couple of different ways to access these articles. You can see that out here in the exhibit is a QR code. You can take your phone, you can open up a QR code scanning app, or even most phone cameras at this point will scan QR codes just within your camera app. So if you open up your camera app and turn it on there, it will hopefully bring up a link to open the article. If you're in the examine page, you can see the QR code is also at the bottom, and we also just have a button that you can press. On PC, the default is Q, and bam, within the Steam overlay, it has opened this free article. So welcome to Patreon. This is one of the free articles that is available for anybody to read. If you would like to see other such articles that are not always free, when I write them, they're usually paywalled, and then over time I unlock them as that content is kind of pushed into the free space. So this isn't about hoarding things behind a paywall, it's about supporting me writing this stuff so that it can eventually become free for anybody to use. So the super simple summary is that this fossil, see right there, immediately see a typo that I'm going to go and fix later. This fossil is a Triassic aged Ammonite, which are shelled animals that lived in the sea during ancient times. More specifically, this Ammonite is a species of Xenoceltites. I've included a suggested pronunciation. It comes from the Thanys limestone of Nevada in the United States and dates back around 250 million years ago. It is therefore older than the oldest known dinosaurs. Xenoceltites is the namesake for an entire family of ammonites known as Xenoceltidae. And then you have a photo of the ammonite. I'm just going to close this real quick and point out that if you're not watching this video, if you're not, doing whatever, looks like the stream okay, it's doing okay now. So if you are just out there in the world, you're not watching a video where I'm narrating this, and you're like, how do I say this name? In this inspection page, you can also press a button and it will play an audio clip of me pronouncing the species. So let's do that real quick. How do you say this name?
Xenoceltites.
Okay, are you sure? Can you say that again?
Xenoceltites.
Okay, interesting. And if you were to make this into an obnoxious remix, how would you say it?
Xenoceltites.
Okay, interesting. Let's go back to the article. So, let's learn more about Xenoceltites. This shelled animal is an ammonite called Xenoceltites. It was recovered from Elko County, Nevada, in a deposit of the Thanys limestone, part of the overall larger Thanys group. The rocks of the Thanys date back to the early Triassic, around 250 million years ago. This was just after the infamous end Permian extinction 252 million years ago, the most severe mass extinction event on record, which saw global devastation of ecosystems. While 2 million years may be an extremely long time from the perspective of humans, it is a very short interval in terms of biology, given how slow and gradual the process of evolution tends to be. Therefore, the proliferation of life like Xenoceltites so quickly after a mass extinction demonstrates the resiliency and adaptability of life, even under extreme conditions. In the early Triassic, Earth's continents were unified into a singular gigantic landmass known as Pangaea. Therefore, locations where Xenoceltites fossils are found today are much further apart than they were in the Triassic due to continental drift. Since the continents were unified in the early Triassic, the oceans were similarly unified, with the majority of the planet encompassed in the vast sea of Panthalassa. It was here, in Panthalassa, that Xenoceltites thrived. As a widely distributed marine invertebrate, Xenoceltites inhabited a world that had been relatively recently depopulated of many forms of life, finding great success in exploiting newly available niches. Outside of what is now North America, fossils of this ammonite have been found across large portions of Asia and Europe, from Oman to Russia, Pakistan, Vietnam, Tibet, Svalbard, and China. Xenoceltites is the namesake for its family of ammonites, known as Xenoceltidae. And here we have our annotated image of these fossils. Let's learn about their paleoecology. Within the Thanys limestone, this ammonite specifically was recovered from a bed known as the Mycoceras zone, a layer containing a distinct assemblage of invertebrate fossils. This zone is an important marker for recognizing early Triassic beds in western North America. So, what we're talking about here is basically layers in which there are distinct species that are very widely found and in a very, very short interval. And all of these different sorts of zones, ammonites are one of these things in biostratigraphic zones that are fairly common because invertebrates tend to evolve very quickly. You can have things like ostracods, foraminifera. You can have bivalves, for example. Any situation in which you have fossils, a very distinct species that's short-lived and widely distributed, you can use those fossils to basically loosely give approximate dates to the rocks that are in them. Because we know, thanks to things like volcanic ash beds and things like that, the more precise numerical dates of different things, and we can associate those with the Ammonites, and then the Ammonites, because they're spread out in places where the ash beds are not, that's how we're able to make educated guesses about the age of particular rock units. So this next section is going to have a lot of scientific names that I wrote out but have not practiced pronouncing out loud. So this will be an interesting exercise in seeing how well I get tripped up on different Latin names. So within the zone, Xenoceltites co-occurs with the Ammonites Anasaborides kingianus and Wasachites perroni. Interestingly, Ammonite species are more diverse in the older layers beneath the Mycocera zone, indicating that Xenoceltites, I'm going to go back and italicize that, may have achieved this great success not just after the great end Permian extinction, but also in the more immediate aftermath of yet another extinction event in ocean ecosystems. As a whole, the Thanes group of Nevada preserves marine fossils of numerous species dating back to the early Triassic. In addition to Xenoceltites, these seas were inhabited by the predatory fish Bergeria. And the nearby Sinbad limestone of Utah, Xenoceltites is found alongside ammonites like Mycoceras gracilitiatus, Guodanides hooveri, Trichides nobili, and a species of Juvenides similar to J. spathi. Let me try that again. Mycoceras gracilitatus. Just because you pronounce Latin names all day, every day, does not mean that you won't be tripped up by something new that you see. And the way that I pronounce a Latin name, the millionth new Latin name that I see is the same way that you start off. You just look at the components, you sound it out word by word, and then you eventually get it correct. Also, I'll point out that there is really no correct way to pronounce Latin names because we have no idea how the actual language of Latin was pronounced. There are theories about it. There's within the Catholic Church, there's Church Latin, so they have ways that they pronounce things, but within the scientific realm, basically, as long as you're pronouncing the right letters in the right order, I usually just go with whatever sounds coolest, right? And let's go ahead and trip me up some more. In Europe, now, I don't speak really any language other than English, so I'm going to probably butcher this. Is this like Viking Hogda? Within that formation of Svalbard, Xenoceltites is associated with the Ammonites Wasachites, W. tridentinus, and a species similar to W. distractus. Arctoprionides, A. nodosus and A. reseri, and Anasiborides, A. kingianus. The Baktoi Formation of Vietnam, again, almost certainly mispronounced that, I'm so sorry. Preserves fossils of Xenoceltites viriocostatus alongside species of the Ammonites Tyrolides and Columbides, as well as two species of the bivalve Critindenia, C. langstonensis and C. australasiatica. The genus Xenoceltites was first established in 1930, with its first species X. subevolutus. This fossil represents an indeterminate species of the Ammonite Ammonite in the genus Xenoceltites. Named species of Xenoceltites include X. viriocostatus and X. corderianus. When slightly different organisms live in close physical or temporal, that's time proximity to each other in the fossil record, paleontologists sometimes struggle to determine whether they represent truly separate species or rather divergent variations of the same population. So Xenoceltites is often found in very close proximity of another ammonite called Glyptophycerus, which some argue is not a unique genus but rather a species of Xenoceltites. If you're interested in learning more and checking out more articles, you can click here to go to the index. That's all of the different articles that I've written, including links to the expedition videos are also in there. The Q&As are also in there. Little disclaimer here, just to make sure that people don't steal the text of my writing for training AI models that will not be able to even use the facts that I'm laying out here correctly. If you'd like to know where I got my information from, here's a list of my sources. I am unfortunately legally not allowed to share, right, en masse, just PDFs of these different papers. But if you are interested in getting access to these, reach out to me and I'll see what I can do for you. And we have a Discord that you can scan to check out. So let's go ahead and close that. Here is Xenoceltites one more time. I will kind of conclude this little exploration by showing you the Moenkopi Formation. So one of the reasons the Thanes limestone is particularly fun is that it's one of the first, it's the first exhibit in SHADOWBOX that is paired with a terrestrial equivalent. So the Moenkopi Formation is a terrestrial unit that is taking place in a very similar time period in a very close proximity. So you can see here it's right there on the coast of Pangaea compared to where we were just previously in the ocean, and there are a number of different animals that you can see from the Moenkopi. Pseudomenotis is a bivalve that is found here. So in addition to obviously the land living animals, there are also invertebrates that live on the land. This exhibit has lots of fossils of a creature called Arizonosaurus, named after the state of Arizona, where I live. It is not a dinosaur. It is within a different family altogether, although they are both within the clade Archosauria. So this is a relative of birds and dinosaurs, of course, but belongs to a different group. Tenosauridae. And you can see it's got these really cool tall neural spines that would have stuck out of the back. Here you can see bones from the hip. This is the left and right ischium, which is very different from what dinosaur ischia look like. You can also see the ilium that's on display over here. There's the ilium. The sacrum, the sacral vertebrae, these are the bones that are basically in between the hips. And through the little hole here, that's the notochord, is where, and there it is in another view, that hole is where basically all of the nerves that go through the body that bring messages back and forth to the brain, that's where those would go. And then you have portions of the femur here. So here's a kind of reconstruction of parts of the hips and the femur and some pieces of the spine of Arizonosaurus. We also have over here a photo and an article of a creature called Eocyclotosaurus, and you can get information over there. Again, my articles are kind of my way of disseminating the information that I have access to, and again, unfortunately, I can't just give out PDFs of scientific research. So these articles are my way of kind of disseminating it and then rewriting it in a format that I can share. And if you'd like to learn more about the sources that I use, we can have a conversation about that. Here we've got, as kind of the centerpiece of this exhibit, this big trackside block that has this big footprint over here. That's what I think is Isochirotherium, and some other footprints present on this block as well, which I have enjoyed displaying here in quite large size for people to see. There's like tail traces here, there's these little tiny, these are the front feet, and these are like the back feet here. So this whole exhibit is really cool. It's one of my favorites. I think it's got one of the best layouts of any of the exhibits that I've built. Every single one, I might start with a template of each exhibit, but I'm basically building them out unique between exhibit to exhibit to be able to show all the material that I have available. So every single exhibit is kind of custom in its dimensions and its layout and things like that. And here is a really cool way to see what's going on in this part of North America, in the western United States, around 245 to 250 million years ago. You can see these animals and learn about their anatomy that were living on the land, and then you can teleport here back to the Thanes group, and we return to the sea. And you can see Xenoceltites and his friend Bergeria. These fossils, these two organisms probably never, almost certainly never encountered each other. They reside in collections that are hundreds of miles apart, but here in SHADOWBOX, in this digital space, they sit side by side. And anywhere in the world with a Windows PC, we're hoping to expand access to other to Mac and Linux soon as well. But basically, anyone who's able to opt into the Windows beta can see these wonderful fossils side by side and hopefully learn a lot. You know, the whole point of this exercise and the whole point of paleontology is to learn about your natural history. These are all relatives of ours because every living thing is all part of the same family tree. These are our distant relatives, very, very distant to be clear, but every living thing is connected, and this is a fascinating example, a form that life took an incomprehensible amount of time ago. So we're going to say goodbye to Xenoceltites, and I'm going to go ahead and close this stream. Thanks everyone who is watching it live. If you're watching the video afterwards, of course, you can leave questions that I'll be able to answer. You know, check out the Patreon. Would really appreciate anybody who decides to donate. Check out the Discord. Check out everything. You know, the more eyeballs that we get on this, the more people that are asking for new exhibits, the more pressure that can be put on different public collections to let me in and to scan things. As a paleontologist, I have the ability to make collections request stuff, but having people out there who are saying, hey, hello local museum, I really want the fossils that are in that collection to be 3D scanned and made freely available, and you know, let them know Benjamin Moeller is qualified to do that, and I'm very willing to travel and get that kind of work done. So that's this update. That's beta 2.1.1. You can always see the version numbers in this corner over here. So if you're seeing a number other than that, you have not downloaded the new update. Go back to Steam and refresh. So we're going to go ahead and close this out. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again soon.